Hello everyone, this is Richard with Janus Motorcycles. Today I thought we'd take a little bit to talk about the logo design for the new 450 Halcyon. If you're familiar with the Janus line, you'll know that all of our 250 bikes, actually going back to the 50cc Halcyon as well, used a large Janus text logo on the side of the fuel tank. There's a historic black and white photograph of a Triumph at Brooklands racetrack, which is an old banked track racetrack, was a banked track racetrack in London, where many famous brands were tested. But the photograph was of this Triumph with a giant Triumph logo on the side of the tank. And that just always really struck a chord with me. And so we've used that big Janus logo on the side of the tank for 10 years now. And with the launch of the 450, we thought it was time for a new version of the tank logo, something a little more developed than just that simple text. So when we decided to do that, we really had to put a lot of thought into not only the logo itself, but the overall design, and if it was just going to be a painted on logo or something with more texture or contours. So what we ended up going with was a medallion or an emblem, which is a metal component, which is then superimposed over another painted piece. And I just wanted to talk a little bit today about the story of how we came up with that and kind of our thoughts for what the symbolism of that means. As we began the process of updating and redesigning the Janus logo, both for the new 450 model and for the brand, one of the first things we looked at was the actual wreath logo itself. As you may be aware, the wreath logo we've used for many years now is a very simple, pared down and plain wreath, which has worked really well, especially for machining and stuff like that. But we were looking for something with a little more detail, a little more filigree when it came to an updated wreath logo. That was really something that was very particular to Janus motorcycles. If you're familiar with wreath logos, the idea is that those are laurel wreaths, laurel leaves that form a wreath that was handed to, actually going back to the ancient Greeks. That was the prize for winning a competition. And so it's obviously been used in motorcycle and car racing. You get a wreath for winning an event. And so it's often been used for different brands, and especially automotive brands. So we wanted to really kind of make that wreath more, really design that more. We have a close friend who's a iconographer, so he paints icons, but he also is a really accomplished just artist in general, and we asked him to kind of reimagine the wreath logo with a little bit more of a kind of traditional, even classical take on that design. What we see up here on the screen are his hand drawings and watercolors. So we were just kind of exploring some ideas, as you can see here. And this one is kind of a play on a motorcycle wheel. You can see the spokes. And then it's getting a little more refined here with the laurel wreath with the berries in a very geometric pattern. As that sort of developed, we came up with the final wreath version. Which what we then did after this initial design is took this design and then input that into CAD and really simplified it down to where it could be completely replicable around as the logo. And then we basically had the wreath figured out. The next thing we took a look at was the double J logo, which man, we've been using that since the 50cc days, and the idea with that is that you have two J's facing opposite directions that also form an M, so JM, Janus Motorcycles, and the two J's looking opposite directions kind of speaks to the Janus, the Roman god who looks to past and future. So we did an update of that, and basically just kind of made it fit in that roundel a little better. Other than that, it remained pretty much unchanged from the 50cc days. We had the wreath logo, and then but we wanted to use this on the fuel tank of the new 450. One thing we really appreciate about the history of automobiles and motorcycles, and something that continues to be important for vehicles is the badging. And so some of the badges that we were thinking about when we came up with the wreath logo, even back in the 50cc days, were these beautiful kind of medallions, often with a kind of wreath logo around the outside edge, similar to some of the ones like we were thinking of the beautiful logos of Alfa Romeo and other brands that incorporated a sort of like maybe a chrome or a die cast emblem within an enamel interior. And oftentimes those, like even thinking of Ferrari or Lamborghini or any, I mean, the list goes on, but they used a kind of almost a heraldic, well, certainly a heraldic kind of language with a very simple, bold brand that was then affixed to the bodywork of the vehicle. And so as we moved from the more flat painted on logo of the Halcyon 50 and then the 250 line to something different on the 450, that's what we were looking at, the more three-dimensional badging of these early automobiles, and really up to the current day. The tradition of these really gorgeous badges continues on today. And so that's something we were really interested in exploring. And we wanted it to still say Janus Motorcycles, so we're not the best known motorcycle brand in the world yet, but we wanted it so people could see what the brand was if they look at it. And we went through a number of different designs for kind of how the medallion would work on the fuel tank. And we went from all kinds of ideas, from a corn husk to kind of reference our Midwestern heritage, but the one that really stuck out to us was a variation of a feather or a wing. That is, we felt symbolically really captures what Janus Motorcycles is about, because of the essence of our bikes is really lightweight, a balance of power and weight, and also the model names of all our motorcycles are mythical birds. So the sort of the flight that the feeling of flight that you can find on a motorcycle, all those things, we really feel like this logo kind of gets at that aspect of that nature of a Janus motorcycle. The interplay between that feather and then the medallion was the next step. And so what we ended up doing was having these beautiful die-cast emblems made for us. And this is, it's a die-cast emblem with black enamel paint set in it. So it has that wreath design straight from originally a watercolor rendering by a good friend of ours, and then inset with the updated double J logo. And then this, as you can see from these early sketches, sits on top of the feather logo, which is then painted on the tank. And then there's a kind of bold stroke through the middle, sort of like the quill of the feather, or kind of like an arrow as well. So on the second prototype here, which has the olive drab green and vintage red pinstripe, we went with the kind of classic gold and black feather in the background, which is really kind of the basis of what we were thinking when we started to go with this logo. So on these tanks, all this is still hand pinstripe. So Kelly paints every single one of these, and she'll be doing all the 450s as well. But basically you see there will be an initial layer of gold paint put down with just this little notch taken out of the feather. And then she goes back over with the black and does the Janus motorcycles and the border with the quill stretching through. And then after that's cured, we then apply the medallion with an automotive adhesive on the fuel tank. And in terms of like maintenance, it's just like any of our old 250s. You can just do a light polish over everything, or like a deep spray detail, and it'll clean everything right up. On this specific medallion, you'll notice that it doesn't have the black enamel in the wreath. That's because this is actually a prototype. Just a prototype medallion on the prototype motorcycle. So here we have our third production prototype. And on this bike, we decided to go, as you can see, with a silver background for the feather instead of gold. Just really, as I've said in previous videos, highlighting that contrast between the silver and gray or black tones. So we will be offering these with the gold, the silver, and then actually our next prototype, the fourth and last prototype, we're going to go with copper for the feather. So there'll be 3 options there for the feather color. Everything else is identical, as you can see. However, this here is the production medallion. So you can see it does have the black enamel paint in the wreath portion. And this just has a really wonderful 3-dimensional quality. It really just adds another layer of depth to the fuel tank. So we've had a lot of fun designing the logo, kind of thinking through the symbolism of the new logo, both for Janus motorcycles, the wreath logo, and the whole combination of the wreath logo medallion and the feather background for the Halcyon 450. We hope this video kind of explains that a little more, and we really appreciate you watching. And make sure you're subscribed to catch more of our upcoming videos.